Hey.
Hey.
Uh-oh, what's going on with your nose?
Oh, it's just itchy.
Oh. You can see my email. Don't project it. Don't project that.
Yeah.
Okay, we don't have to talk about it.
It's gonna be kind of hard not to though, because of how the thing happens. There's no looking in my email when that whole process happens. But
What's the best way that I can help you to help try to see that it's not a mess, or is there a way?
there really isn't. I think, and I think the problem is. So remember this too. Nobody gets denied. It's something. All I do is give the state the correct information according to our record.
That's what
So that's also not what they told me. Because I don't say no.
No, I know, but luckily, it's going to be the first one inside.
Is it just us?
Right.
I'm only worried.
Is it,
that because we
Corinne?
have the second one, they'll come in and, hey, you will have your
Was it muted?
approved five.
Oh, no. Every inquiry has to get responded to. So as long as we have the right,
Yes.
as long as they have the right maximum amount,
Yeah, locally.
it always
It doesn't matter that you were the.
Nope. Nope. Yeah, because they're only done one at a time. Yeah.
Well, I knew that they were done one at a time, but I didn't know if
You
guys
track.
were tracking.
No.
Okay.
Because they'll send multiple inquiries for the same one. Yes.
Okay. I was just trying to clear over so to try to be clear.
It's a
I feel your manager problem.
Yeah. I know you do.
I'm going to go ahead and get started. We only have a small group. Who's joined us on the line? Hello?
Oh, hi, it's Karen Byers.
Hi, Karen. Hey, you want to move that little pod dealio right in the middle between the two? Yeah, you are.
One area so that.
Karen can hear us clearly. Bring the pod with you.
Yes, I can.
Good.
I hear a lot of background noise, but I'm sure that'll settle down.
Because we're moving so that we're all close to the pod. And you can hear us. Corinne, come on over.
Nice.
Yeah.
And we're back in A, so it should be slightly better because it's a smaller room.
All right, great.
Okay. All right. It's cute. I like the outfit.
Thank you.
This is Sarah Duquette. I think all of you look familiar, but I can't remember your name.
Jen.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and
I know, I'm going to be
roll call because we know everyone. Karen, myself, Jen, Corinne, Hannah, and Siobhan.
I like that.
Stuart just joined the conference. Stuart just joined.
Did someone else join us?
Stuart.
Is that you, Paul?
Stuart. I'm sorry, I couldn't make it in person. There's too much going on at my ranch right now.
That's okay. So with that, we put on our second item just working group participation guidelines. And I just wanted to give you an update because I know we had the conversation about last time about kind of sending out a message, if you want to still be involved, reply back, kind of the guidelines. And we didn't forget. And it's going through the chain, and we're gonna figure out if we can just go ahead and do that, or if there needs to be any board discussion or involvement around participation and how it works. It was at this one and the last, and on cultivation. It happened at both. Or
Wait, are you talking about direction from the board about what
participation in the working group?
Oh, whether or not it would require a commitment or something.
Yes.
Perfect.
And so I wanted you to know that we didn't forget that I have the list, and then we're going to figure out if we can do that internally or if the board somehow has to be involved. So I just wanted to give you an update.
Thank you.
We didn't forget you.
Question though.
Yeah.
As long as we're asking for guidance, don't we think we need some indication of who might say, yes, I'm still interested, no, I'm not, from a volition point of view, from the mailing list? Because we may not have any problems if people say they don't want to participate anymore. We may not need any further direction.
Yeah. We can, let me just run that by Carmel, and maybe we can at least just do an email this month that says we're cleaning up this list for maybe 2019. Please reply back if you want to stay on this email list.
Or still be a part of the working group. The only question about that, Corinne, is that if the policy, and I think this is what we were asking, is before the policy was we could keep adding new members regardless of whether people dropped off or not. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, I would like to propose, not that there can never be a change, but that maybe only a certain number of times a year or whatever, because if new people keep getting added in, that is what partially slows us down, as well as people not showing
and
up.
it might be the perfect time in January, now that we have 2 new board members, that we may want to talk about how these are structured in general.
Yes.
So.
Hi, this is Ron.
Hi, Ron.
I'm here, so I'm listening, participating.
I was just saying, Ron, that we didn't forget that the group suggestion about kind of participation and addressing that. So we're looking at it internally of what we need to do, and then what needs board direction, and then possibly kind of getting more direction on do they want to restructure these or put more guidelines. There really weren't guidelines, really, when we started this. You know, it was like anyone want to participate kind of deal.
And just for those of you on the phone, this is Hannah, and it relates to our previously raised concerns that if people don't show up either by phone or in person, and then show up after a while, we have to start over or fill them in, or they're behind speed. And then also the second part of that is that previously, I don't know whether it was official or unofficial policy, new members could be added at any time, and so maybe there ought to be a consideration of only adding new members every quarter or whatever, I don't know. So that's what that topic related to.
Yeah. And then before we move to the LED platform thing, I do want to give you, I'm sure most of you will be joining us on December 11th. We will provide more information about the local authorization stuff that people had question about, so stay tuned for that. And CCA information.
Oh, you mean on non-cultivation?
On all of it. On cultivation, non-cultivation, local authorization process, and information about the CCA.
Got it.
So good, we got the CCA information. That's good.
So that will be
on the 11th.
Yeah, the first agenda item of the day will be the cannabis update, and we'll specifically only be addressing those issues that they gave us directions the last time, but those are the 2 ones. Before we move into that.
So we still won't have an official thing on track and trace until some point down the road?
In the provisions of the proposed amendments, there's changes to the track and trace language that makes it a lot broader and then gives the board the decision about the one track and trace. So once that goes into effect, they'll be able to then provide the direction of what they want to do.
Okay, great.
Because the words are saying you have to have a county track and trace, you must comply, blah, 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 blah. That's not going to be in there. It's like a one-liner, really.
Got it. I have a question also about the 11th. Do you know whether or not, because I was not at that November special meeting, and when I downloaded all the attachments, it hadn't been added yet, but apparently after the fact, D.A. Eister had a whole bunch of stuff.
You never saw that?
I finally saw it the other night.
It should be up on the item.
Well, now it is, but at the time when I was like writing my memo in advance of the meeting, and that's no problem, but I only learned of it the other night when I was reviewing all that stuff, and so...
Yeah, he brought it the day up.
I know. And so is that going to be on discussion for the 11th or not?
Yeah, the changes are there. The changes, the item's published. We published the day early.
Yeah. Oh.
So the items are up there.
For today, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so we published the meeting yesterday. So we got it done a day early. But yeah, the changes to,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
I would read it, though.
will.
There's a major difference between ICER's memo and what the proposed language is.
Perfect, yeah,
It's
good.
some miles.
Thank you.
And you out these facilities, and maybe make some comments.
Yeah,
I will.
that's what I said, for sure. I agree.
So that's
Thank
just
you.
where we are on that.
Perfect, thank you for
So-
that update.
Moving on to the ledge platform.
Can I mention one thing that I don't see in
Sure.
here? Okay, and thank you so much for listing these out. It's really helpful. And I don't remember whether it was in that letter that I gave you, that I wrote to Jim Woods, the memo after my meeting with him or during the meeting. Anyway, the cooperative associations, the cannabis cooperative associations have a 4-acre cap. And because the state never instituted the 1-acre cap overall, the 4-acre cap winds up being extremely hampering to having small farmers come together and create an economy of scale for that type of entity. And it needs to be a legislative fix because it's written into the statute. So if we could add that as an item, that would be just awesome.
So you want to restate that
Sure.
to me? And I'll type this out. So we did publish for the standing committee, but that doesn't matter because we have some other things coming in, and so any changes or additions we make today, I'll have it, and the standing committee will get it on Friday.
So the current statutes limit participation in the new created cannabis cooperative association entities that were created under MCRSA, limits it to a maximum of 4 acres worth of participants. Given that the overall 1-acre cap was not ever instituted, limiting cooperative member participation.
So you just want no restriction on acreage for co-op. How about that? Perfect. So we
I didn't know if you needed
support legislative change to remove the 4-acre cap from cooperative associations.
Cannabis cooperative associations.
Remove or increase, or either?
Remove.
Okay.
And the short reason is to allow economy of scale for small farmers.
On cannabis cooperative to allow, what was it? What did you say?
Economy of scale for small farmers. And it's also the specific name of the entity is Cannabis Cooperative Association. It's a really separate creature. They created a whole new corporation in me.
So I'm going to just start at so first the standing committee meeting is on December 10th, so Monday, and the standing committee of general government is made up of Supervisor Carrie Brown and Supervisor Dan Jurdy. So what we did and what you'll see published is I have a red line of all of our internal changes that I've made or departments have done, and then I have a one-sheeter that has this of recommendations coming out for the group. And so I'm going to go over first all the changes that we have, and then after that, I'll open it up to department heads that have some additional changes that didn't meet the original deadline to get me stuff. And then from there, I'm going to go to the cannabis recommendation, and my recommendation is going to be to incorporate all these items into the ledger platform. And so if they take that recommendation, then I go ahead and put it in. And then we are going to the legislative platform will be before the Board of Supervisors on January 22nd. And that item will happen probably between around 11:30. So we're going to go over all the changes of the legislative platform. We'll also have our lobbyists there to provide a legislative update the new session and the transition to Governor Newsom, et cetera.
And then around 11:30.
Yeah. And then after that, once it's adopted, all of that information goes out to all of our elected officials, and we make sure they get all of that, and then it allows us to take action really quickly, so we don't have to go through the normal board route. We can go ahead and take action and then come back later and say we've done this. So with that, I just want to go through each one of these. I try to take what everyone said and kind of wordsmith it into a succinct sentence to add. So, you know, here's the time to make changes, and so when I bring in a revised copy on Monday, everything's good to go. So the first one was support self-distribution license for small cultivators in rural areas. Everyone good with that one?
Could you repeat that? It was hard to hear.
The first one is support self-distribution license for small cultivators in rural areas.
Yes. Okay.
The second one is advocate for generator regulations that address the needs of rural communities and small farmers.
Yes.
And then stop me if you guys want to make changes. The third one is water use considerations that are appropriate for rural communities and small farmers.
Can I stop and add something? I would love it if we can also add and reward conservation or incentivize conservation, I guess is the better way.
The next one is,
One more thing.
yeah, sure.
I would like to add to the water question, and I don't know if anybody else will support this, but I think it's important for us to again state that all agricultural products should be held to the same water standards.
I agree.
Which they are currently not at all.
So you're talking about like the difference between grapes and cannabis?
Grapes, cannabis, orchards, lavender.
Right.
You know what might be a good way to put that is, and treat cannabis like traditional agricultural products. And the reason I'm saying that is the Farm Bureau does not want traditional ag to be treated like cannabis.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys want cannabis treated like regular ag. So maybe we word it of incentivize conservation and treat cannabis agriculture like traditional. And what about equalize?
I like that.
The reason I don't want to go that way is because the big fight that the wine industry is convincing the state not to treat them like cannabis. So equalizing can go, let's regulate them more, and I think we want to deregulate. I think that's what the cannabis industry wants, is not to be held to a higher standard than regular ag products.
Apply regular agriculture standards to cannabis.
Exactly.
Okay.
This is Paul Hansberry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I spoke with Dan Schultz at the Water Board, and I raised that question with him a long time ago. We met for about 3 hours. And when I asked him that, I said, why isn't it equal to grapes? Why is it just cannabis? And he said that they weren't tasked with regulating grapes, they were tasked with regulating cannabis. And that's what they came up with. So that might be an uphill battle unless you come from the governor down, because that's the only people who have oversight over the Water Board.
They've been working on the North Coast order for vineyards for a while.
Yeah, also, Paul, I had, I went to the Water Board meeting in November, and they were actually extremely supportive. So I think that from the Water Board's perspective, it may be fine. I think it's the state legislature that has to then specify that for these purposes, cannabis water rules will align with traditional agriculture. And I think that's the part that has to be looped back in.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So then the next one is cottage level microbusiness license that is streamlined for small rural farmers. The one after that is support expanded opportunities for direct sales and self-distribution.
Isn't that kind of similar to the first one?
Yeah.
Okay. But I love the direct sales part in there.
Direct sales.
Maybe we should just
Drop the self-distribution.
only because we have it up top.
Yeah.
And then the next one is support the development of micro-business opportunities, which is kind of similar to the one above,
Maybe
but a little different.
We could just add, and opportunities, micro-level business license and opportunities that are streamlined for farmers?
Yeah. Combine these two. And then the next one is support the continued development of cannabis business tourism. Support,
Can I get more specific on that? Including directing tourism board dollars.
including tourism funds,
Including funding.
like Visit California and stuff like that?
Yeah, yes.
So then what you're really saying is increase opportunity funding for cannabis tourist businesses?
I think that it's more than just the funding, but I don't necessarily want to go through all the little picky things because, for example, there are no regulations about tourism and stuff like that, and I don't necessarily want to open up that can of worms, but I want to be more inclusive than just funding. So I think that if we say support the continued development of cannabis business tourism and funding.
This is Stuart. I would like to also add to that, investigate the possibility of a cannabis business improvement district for Mendocino County, modeled after the lodging business improvement district, to help fund that.
That's
Local.
That's local. But what I was going to say we have opportunities, but we don't.
Well, hey, Stuart, this is Hannah. I think that's an excellent point, but it doesn't belong in a legislative platform. But the next working group, which is non-cultivation, even though we're dealing with microbusiness first, one of the later topics is tourism and economic development, and so I think that's the appropriate place to bring this up because it is a local thing, not a state legislative platform thing.
And I think the one thing, if you're interested in that kind of items, would be to support, so Jerry Brown eliminated redevelopment agencies, and there's been talks about bringing back or expanding.
Right.
They brought something back. It's kind of not that great, but they're talking about what are ways we can bring back components of that for economic and redevelopment, and that's one of those funding streams we used to have to do things. But looking at bringing back that, but also cannabis part of it.
Can I just make a comment also? Is that a business improvement district, I believe, has to be approved by the state, and there are business improvement district formats for lodging and for grapes and wine and things, but I don't believe there's one set up at the state level for cannabis. And because the business improvement district, I do believe, has to be approved by the state. So I'm suggesting that the state consider that as a program for all of the counties.
I don't think that actually the state has anything to do with approving a business development district. That's a zoning issue that is handled at each local, county, and city level.
Yeah, and there's a difference between statute allowing you to do things, but most of the time when it comes to those types of districts, it's more like it's an allowed item, and then your municipality, your county is responsible for implementing any of these types of things.
Primarily based off the fact that we get paid to do some of the work, too. I mean, that's the difference.
And we can put something in development of cannabis business tourism, funding, and we could even add something in there about incentives programs. Because that's essentially what you're kind of talking about, is it's allowing locals or finding ways the state can allow different types of incentive programs, and which are open to some industries.
And not others.
Right.
And not others.
Yeah, that's a good way. So support continued development of cannabis business tourism, funding, and incentive programs.
And then the next one is support expanding the type of cannabis licenses allowed to participate in cannabis events. Expand cannabis cottage level licenses allowing home business or street businesses to enter the cannabis industry.
I don't get that one.
That's what I had for my notes. I think they really wanted more, which is more somewhat of a local, kind of local.
I think that this is a zoning thing and not a state legislation thing.
I thought this was about
I think
the
the portion, I think part of it is local, and then I think part of it is more tiers at the licensing level. So us allowing to do our regulations to allow you to have a home business, but then to make it feasible, fee-wise.
They eliminated certain activities from homes or from residences.
So actually,
Activities, I think.
So it would be expand tier or create tiers of cottage level licenses, and then it's change well, zoning is the home business part.
It could be develop cannabis cottage licenses, allowing home businesses to enter the cannabis industry. Well, I think the barrier entry at the state level is, yeah, you can't do certain things in your home. B, if you're a small business, you can't afford to enter the market.
Okay, so how about
I think it's a combination. Okay. Our end, yes, it's the zoning question, but on their end.
So develop non-cultivation cannabis
I would just say cannabis licenses. I don't like cap.
Well, because we already have cottage level cultivation licenses.
But with the general language, it allows us, to, regardless of what the state decides to do, to push cottage. Whatever they.
So develop cannabis cottage level licenses, allow use of homes.
I think that's the key, to allow the use of homes.
Allowing home-based businesses.
Well, there already are home-based businesses allowed. It's just that the BCC doesn't allow the home to be part of the premises. So if you allow home,
and remember, the more general, sometimes the better.
Right, but they would say we don't have to fix it because we already allow home-based businesses.
So you know what I'm saying? It says allowing home businesses, which means the county can take action on any piece of legislation and advocate for anything that would allow doing business in your home easier.
Okay.
So you got to look at it as a rhythm. This is the language that justifies our lobbyists and our county employees to act on legislation.
Okay. So it's not
we're running
home-based businesses.
Okay. But so we're not trying to get specific on what we're asking the legislature to do. We're just getting general topics that we want the board to approve of that will support later specific legislation development.
Yes.
Okay.
And then it shows our legislature, what are our priorities. Our priorities are small farmers. Our priority is small businesses.
Got it.
So.
Got it. That makes sense.
And then when we work with our lobbyists, it's like if any legislation comes on that touches on any of these things, then it's an automatic notification to us, and then we can engage.
And is there a way that we can help get our lobbyists to propose more specific things within these categories?
No.
Okay. Because that's really the issue, is that we need I totally get it that these broad topics are necessary for the board to approve so that then later we can do whatever, but the legislature seeing these broad topics are not going to get the specifics of what we need.
And typically how it works is the legislatures that will carry bills from us are Wood and McGuire.
Right.
So if there's priority things, that's what we're going to talk about,
then we
sponsoring legislation.
Got it.
But typically when our lobbyists are working with legislators that aren't our personal legislators, it's more taking
responsive.
or saying this bill is bad for counties, so they're going to pound the pavement and visit every single legislator and every single staffer, where we work with our own legislators to support their bill.
Perfect. Thank you.
Advocate for state-recognized cannabis banking system, which that's the bill that's going to drop in January. Advocate for stronger regulatory enforcement of cannabis regulations. Support, and this one we had that long conversation of how do we do this. Wait, this is my first attempt.
Can I ask on the last one?
Sure.
Should we remove the first regulatory and then just leave advocate for stronger enforcement of cannabis regulations?
Sure. Support a state ombudsman program with the Department of Consumer Affairs to address complaints of bad cannabis business practices for consumers and licensees. So that was my attempt at combining the various comments we had from the last meeting.
I think that's a really good summation. Fine.
Okay.
I would remove for consumers because they already have that for the consumers. I would just for licensees. And I would almost say business to business practices.
Are those ones we were considering?
Yeah,
okay.
it's all the distributors who are
Business,
and retailers and manufacturers. You name it, they're not paying.
Okay. Make those changes. The next one is support expanding co-location licensing model for cannabis processing. Has that captured what was said at the last meeting?
Isn't that a license type that should be identified? Is that the
processing
P or?
So I would say it's actually a co-location / shared facility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Licensing model for cannabis processing, and then if you want to get more specific, you could go akin to Type S, which is the manufacturing shared facility.
Okay. The next one, support specific cannabis regulatory provisions for rural communities to address regional needs and challenges. The one after that is advocate for flexible.
Can I suggest that we put this as like the header and that's all of these things?
Sure, we can make that the first one.
Well, I mean, in other words, I think that this is exactly encompasses all these other ones, you know what I mean?
Okay.
I don't know if that's your take on it, but, you know, that we're hitting home that this is our goal.
So sub-bullet, everything else is sub-bullet.
I don't know. And let's just add then at the end, address regional needs and challenges of small farmers, because that's the group we're advocating for.
Yeah.
Okay.
Small farmers.
And then advocate for...
Well, actually, not just farmers, small operators.
Small businesses.
Small businesses. Thank you.
Advocate for flexible and reduced / streamlined regulations for small farmers under 10,000 square feet.
Okay. The only thing I would do with this wording is 10,000 square feet or under. As some of us are like right at the line.
And the last one's not supposed to be a bullet point like that. It was just an opportunity for anyone that wanted to speak about the regulation to speak.
This is Paul. Can I speak to the advocate for flexible and reduced streamlined regulations for small farmers? Do we want to add that for small farmers, 10,000, because by the state 10,000 or less is a small farmer, that for small farmers that the local jurisdiction should have more say in the regulations?
That's a double-edged sword. I understand what you're getting at, Paul, because for issues such as like security or particular requirements, but I think that locally they already do have the ability to do stuff to add in their own flavor, especially with cultivation, and that maybe the flexibility that you're hoping for that county or local jurisdiction takes over on are the micro-business and non-cultivation activities that would allow for home-based businesses, et cetera.
Well, not necessarily. You've only got 25 plants if you're growing as a cottage cultivator, if you're growing it outdoors, according to the state, but not the county.
Got it.
Well, and the problem is the county can't be more flexible, they can only be more restrictive.
No, there's a few items in the statute that give counties the ability to be less restrictive.
And what subjects are those?
The setbacks from sensitive receptors.
Yep.
And there was one other, and I can't remember what it is.
There's a deadline for that one.
So I hear what you're saying, Paul, and that makes sense, but I'd say it's a double-edged sword.
Well, one thing he did that brought up that we don't have a bullet point, and I don't know if you wanted one, was anything about security requirements?
Yes, and also the 25 plant legislative fix, because currently in the legislation...
It's 25, not square foot, right?
Yeah, for outdoor, and it should be square foot, either or.
Yeah.
I can add that one.
Thank you.
I have a question. It kind of ties into the security question.
Tell me on that.
What is the goal for the Advocate for Stronger Enforcement of Cannabis Regulations? What do you guys mean by that?
Sorry, can you repeat? I was typing.
Because I advocate for stronger enforcement of cannabis regulations.
Okay, that means if you're not licensed, you shouldn't be doing business, period.
So I'm wondering, because the way I read it is not about people who are out of process. The way I read it is that you want people who are in process to be more heavily regulated.
I think that's true, too, though.
In process, I think
the ideal is you want the good actors to be recognized and the bad actors to not.
That's why I'm curious. This language is kind of...
But there is no, in the whole state funding and how they were going to address these illegal growers and their wet teams and stuff was a giant joke.
Yeah. Well, no, but they have now huge funding through the licensing agencies, not CDFW,
right,
but through the licensing agencies. In fact, they have more enforcers hired than anything else.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Well, they're still getting, going.
Well, and there's
the
sheriff for more enforcement. You know, that's a federal.
What I find is that a lot of times in the budgetary process, money gets allocated that's supposed to go to the locals for a number of enforcement, fire, cannabis, you name it. And the chances that that money actually goes from the state of California to a local municipality is rare. And usually it's not the amount they originally said, which is why most of the time counties and cities advocate for funding coming directly to us. When it goes to a state agency and the state agency gives it to us, the amount that actually gets to us is just
the same thing happens when federal money is allocated through the state. Often the governor robs it and puts it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger was famous for that with
But do you guys understand what I'm saying? Why I'm concerned about the way it's written here?
Yes.
Because when I read it, it sounds like we want people who are trying to get annual state licenses to be more regulated. And I don't think that was the intent.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Mm-hmm. It does seem that way when you're...
But does anybody remember...
For stronger enforcement, cannabis regulations for...
Non-licensed.
Non-compliant? I would say stronger enforcement of non-licensed, unlicensed. Yeah.
Advocate for stronger enforcement of cannabis regulations for
I would say stronger because it's not about the regulations. So it's about advocate for stronger enforcement of illegal cannabis operations.
Yeah, that works.
Licensed or illegal?
Illegal, because if it's unlicensed, it's illegal.
Yeah, I think that drives the home clearer. That was my only concern about it.
There is some legal cannabis cultivation for personal use.
Well, right. That's why saying illegal is better than saying unlicensed.
Yeah. Agreed. because you could be growing.
Or we could say illegal commercial cannabis operations.
That would be better, I think.
I think
Illegal
so, too.
commercial cannabis operations.
That's literally what we're talking about.
Cannabis.
Illegal commercial cannabis operations.
Okay. Now, is there anything from this list we're missing besides the 25 square feet for outdoor cottage?
The only other thing that I could think of is, maybe it's included in the economic development. Wait, let me just look here.
You mean the platform?
Yeah.
Because we got a lot of stuff about economic development.
Well, I thought of something specific, but I don't know if it should be specific or not, and that is, I want specific funding for displaced cannabis farmers or operators, retraining, and,
Come on.
Question. Anything like that available for other ag industries that have?
absolutely,
Yeah.
but here's the caveat, is the federal funding for those type of things can't be used for, well, it can for displaced farmers, because they're just displaced farmers, but it can't be for, let's say, training somebody in a cannabis industry to be a processor, like, work for Flocana or whatever.
That's not correct, Hannah. This is Karen Myers, and I said it on the Go Biz webinar. Did anyone else?
Which webinar?
The Go Biz, which is the funding that's going to be reallocated back. It's the Community Reinvestment Grant Program. And that's
Right,
where
but
a lot
I'm not
of this
talking
money
about
is
that. I'm
gonna-
talking about economic development funding from the feds can't be used to train cannabis professions. You can use federal funds to retrain somebody who's been shut down out of the cannabis market. So I'm advocating for two separate things. One is specialized state funding for training skilled labor for the cannabis industry, and then secondly, direct federal and state training for displaced farmers or operators who have had to stop because they couldn't afford it or they didn't buy or whatever. So they're kind of two separate things.
To respond to your question, Corinne, about whether or not it currently exists, the answer is yes. So the Department of Pesticide Regulation, part of what the Ag Department does around this time of year is produce what we call worker training seminars. And you come, we train you, and those hours count towards you maintaining your certification, and you don't have to pay for it, because it's through our thing with this part of us, right?
Right, but that's a really limited, that's not training.
No, but she just asked if there were any.
Could I bring that
cross
to
these
clarity?
lines? One thing that crossed these lines is there's been a huge push in the last few years, nothing to do with cannabis, but in terms of technical education.
Right.
There's a major drop-off, and that's been a concern for a couple of years, and you're seeing locals and some of the legislators taking that out of not everyone is college-bound / a lot of people, as technology changes and the field changes, there needs to be a way to retrain the workforce, but also provide technical education for non-college careers.
Right.
And I know that's been a really big push of trying to get funding to high schools and community colleges to focus on tech education and STEM education.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that can dovetail with that, because that is actually personally I think one of the number one issues facing our county is we don't have education opportunities that other counties have.
Right.
And so how do you?
So I think though that, I mean, I used to be in workforce development. Go ahead.
All right. So I attended the Go Biz seminar for California Community Reinvestment Grant Program. There's going to be $10 million available by June. So this is happening. And part of it is about job placement. And then it was brought directly to them about could there be training for job placement within the cannabis community, and there can be. This just all has to be done through nonprofits who apply for this monies. But I just really want to point that out, that this is a valuable resource that Mendocino County completely fits the criteria of a high impacted area from the war on cannabis. And I would love to do a presentation on it in the near future, or at least do an email presentation with the group.
So,
Hey guys,
Karen,
I'm going to get caught up on the YouTube. I'm going to lose cell service. I'm on the road.
Karen, did you know whether or not the specific issue of whether or not any of those funds are coming from federal funding, whether that came up or not?
It's all from tax revenue, cannabis tax revenue. This was part of Prop 64.
Okay, so it's state. Perfect.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Got it.
Yeah.
So getting
And,
back to the legislative
$10 million is up for
platform.
grabs.
So I have a draft
Two separate.
line. Funding for workforce training for legacy cannabis businesses that are unable to transition to the new commercial industry. I think that what we're getting at is people that ultimately, for whatever reason,
Right.
they end up having to leave the industry, and what do they do now?
And they're called displaced workers. And
For displaced
workers / businesses.
Displaced cannabis businesses / workers.
Mm-hmm. And then separate from that is what Karen's talking about, which is, funding specifically to retrain to train cannabis workers. But it sounds like that's coming down the pike in June, so that'd be great.
Yeah, that funding
Karen,
allocated.
who is eligible to apply? Nonprofits?
Yes, it seems to be that you'll need a nonprofit to sponsor your project. I'm looking into it because of the type of workshops I've been doing. They won't pay for cannabis business development, but they will pay for training employees, cannabis or not cannabis.
Are they going to be doing JOT vouchers, on-the-job training vouchers?
I don't know that. This is the first time this group has met because the funding is just now available. So I'll be glad to kind of bottom line keeping y'all informed about what's going on with it.
Okay, can you ask that question next time your group meets?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Do we want to add something that addresses the differences between how the state and county measure cannabis?
No, that's already in.
That's already in, okay.
That's carry forward from us.
Is premise stuff in there
It's a
too?
perennial issue.
Like,
What did I put in here?
I have a few more things I'd like to add to the legislative.
Yeah, advocate for state change the
platform
definition of cannabis to provide more flexibility for the economic development of cannabis farmers and business.
cause that to me is one of the biggest. Yeah.
That's in there.
And it's nuanced. You wouldn't even notice it.
Go ahead, Julia.
Now, this is Karen.
Oh, sorry,
So,
Karen.
that's all right. So I would like to ask that our county support Senator Werner's as he reintroduces the Compassionate Access Bill for medical cannabis, and it has
So,
already
Karen,
been
is there a way that you can, we didn't, the first part of what you said get garbled. Is there any way that you can, do you have a better way to speak into your phone or connection?
So once the legislative platform is adopted and the bill is introduced, send me an email, okay, with the bill number.
Okay, yeah, the bill's been introduced, so I'll send that to you.
Okay?
And then the thing that we aren't talking about that I think our county would be wise to be supporting and moving forward is the equity opportunities of high impacted communities. And that legislation has already passed. That probably more will happen this year. Again, I'll send information about that.
So I think though that is worth rolling into a ledge platform issue, which is define or designate Mendocino County as an impacted area for purposes of qualifying for equity programs.
I like that.
Because one of the problems is that there's been a lot of debate in the equity program community about whether only urban areas and people of color who were negatively impacted by the effect of the war on drugs are eligible for equity programs, or whether, as we would like to advocate, rural communities that saw camp infiltrations and DEA actions and
designate Mendocino County as an affected region to qualify for the equity program funding.
That works for me. Thank you.
Anything else we're missing?
Probably, but you did a great job. Thank you.
Yes, you did, Sarah. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's all we have for the legislative. Yes, Paul?
I got an email a few days ago saying that the Compassionate Cannabis Bill got reintroduced last week, the equivalent, if it's not the same, as SB 829.
Probably. I mean, they swore them in on the 4th, and then I believe a lot of people introduced legislation. Yeah. And then they won't be back in session until January.
Question to this group: has anybody heard the inside track on when the proposed annual state regs will be confirmed as?
So Casey told me the other day at lunch that he had heard, and I asked him where, he said Hezekiah, that the Office of Administrative Law is holding all of the regulations, and the reason why, and not going to release them until January. I don't know if this is true or not. This is just what he told me. And that the reason why is because the provision in the BCC regulations that basically allowed statewide delivery services regardless of the local jurisdiction got removed or changed, and they didn't want to release the new regulation until it was already in effect. I personally, even if that is an actively commented thing amongst people in Sacramento, I would have a hard time believing that all of the regulations are being held up for that reason, especially since there are 2 other agencies that have separate regulations. So but with that said, I can't completely discount that because I just don't know. And the Office of Administrative Law will not answer the question as to when they'll be dropped. And then I haven't had time, I did this the last time, but I haven't had time right now to research the law to see if there's a date from the time that those agencies get it to OAL to the time that they must release them to the public. And I just haven't had time, but I bet you and it could be one of those that there is no specific regulation on it, but it could be that there is, and I just haven't had time. But that's what I know.
Hi, this is Paul.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, I've heard that last Monday, they released it to the Office of Administrative Law, that they are holding because most of the changes are insignificant. And so it'll be mid-January before it's released to the public, and at that point it will be a 5-day comment period. but and the Bureau says they're trying to find a way to release them earlier, but, good luck with that.
Paul, who did you hear that from, first off, and why would they be held until mid-January if there are insignificant changes? That
was unclear in the two different articles that I read. One of the articles said that it was that the Bureau was working on trying to get them released before the middle of January, but that they were given to the Office of Administrative Law last Monday, and they were holding them, and the rationale that they said in this article that I read was that the changes were insignificant and were already approved.
Right, so can you tell me where that article was? Because that logic doesn't really actually hold to the regulations.
You know what, I'll research that and send it to you, Hannah.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'll try and actually look up the law, and if I have the time, I'll let everybody know.
Great, thank you.
Sure. My spare time.
So with that, is there anything else you guys want to say on state regulations? Because that's all we had today. And then the next question is, do we want to meet quarterly or bi-monthly or monthly? What's your feeling?
Well, given the schedule that you just gave us, that 12:10 is the standing committee and the 1:22 is the Board of Supervisors meeting, would you, given your experience with how that rolls out, think that it might be important to have an additional meeting after that January 22nd meeting? Or do you think, well, there's nothing else that we could do at that point, and therefore we should maybe turn it?
Well, actually, I anticipate the General Government Standing Committee accepting all of these.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see them not.
And then what about the board? Same thing.
The board, you should just show up. It's hard to say. There's too many people.
Yeah, no, I know about that supervisor who always says no to everything. You never know about her.
And you never know about the two that you don't know.
How they act and do know.
You know what I'm saying? You have two people that are, for the first time ever, being on the dais.
Yeah.
So who knows?
No, but I meant in terms of, do you think that there would be a reason to meet after that meeting? Do you think that might be helpful? Okay, no. That's all. Then I'm going to go with your experience on this.
Which date in January is the actual transition of officers?
January 1st, whatever the first Monday is, right?
No, well, I can't see it. Let me go to my calendar on here. I just wait, where's 2019? Oh, right. It's the first meeting of January that gets sworn in.
Okay.
And I believe that's the 8th. Yes, because the first day of the year is a holiday, and that's Tuesday. So January 8th, they'll get sworn in. And most of the items are organizational. So at that time, they'll get sworn in. They'll also be given assignments for the various boards and commissions that they're going to sit on.
Speaking of which, the Cannabis Committee it's disbanded or something?
Did the ad hoc cultivation get disbanded? I couldn't.
Every single ad hoc committee gets disbanded at the last meeting of that calendar year. So I think the county was thinking about doing an item, but it doesn't matter. December 18th, every single ad hoc committee gets disbanded.
Right. So we're done in a couple weeks.
Yes.
Right. We just want him to reintroduce it as okay.
Later.
Yeah.
What is that exactly?
Just a standing committee.
In general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or ad hoc committee, one or the other. Yes.
Yes.
Definitely. Definitely.
That's why I was asking.
Definitely. But you know what, though? I know who's going to volunteer, and that would be fine.
Just out of curiosity, this is again off topic. Did anybody see this particular article?
What is it?
Which was kind of interesting. It's from it's licensed cultivation capacity in California's adult use market. So it's only adult use concerns, but 22.1% of all adult use cannabis is grown in Santa Barbara, 20.4% in Humboldt, 12.6% in Monterey. Mendocino comes in at a thriving 9.2, followed by Los Angeles County, licking at our heels with 6.1.
That makes sense.
And that does make
It makes sense if you look at the scale.
But I'm also not sure that that's accurate, because if that's based on license applications are not
Licensed cultivation capacity.
Capacity?
Well, from licenses. I mean, there's more in here that's interesting to me, because there's quite a discussion of indoor versus outdoor in the state scheme of things, and they do talk about Santa Barbara County is also home to 13 of 20 of the largest cultivation operations. The state, with average licensee holding nearly 13 grower licenses, well above the 1.4 license average in the rest of the state.
Right.
Well, you got to look at those counties and how they prioritize their things. It's go big or go home.
The allowable amount.
We are at, in my opinion, and this is also off topic, so stop me if you want, but we've got, an intrusion afoot already. Starting in Cobolo, I don't know where else it is. I have the heart-wrenching suspicion that some of the things going on in Cobolo were probably discussed with some of our county governance people. It answers a few questions as to why some of the ad hoc committee's recommendations were worded the way they were. And I am complaining at the get-go, as soon as I heard it, that we take some action at the local level. It's not this group, I understand, but to make known how these new corporate invasions, particularly Canadian ones, I mean, that's not keeping money in our county or even in our country, are antithetical to the current letter and spirit of our ordinances, even though the wording may present loopholes that are problematic. So,
can I ask you a question about what you just said?
Certainly.
What in the recommendation, you're saying the recommendation to maybe go up to 4 acres or whatever, that's what you're talking about? Okay, I was going over the recommendation, I'm going, what in the world?
Like I said before, if you want a transparent process, standing committee is the way to go.
Standing committee.
It takes longer, but it's transparent.
And you can always do a freedom of information request.
I know, and it's hard for me, unfortunately, because I'm not personally in that zone. I'm not.
Remember, you're a citizen of Mendocino County.
You can't PRA conversation.
No, but anyway.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But anyway, I think, yeah.
Hi. First, on topic, I would strongly advocate for keeping the status quo as monthly meetings, because if things are still developing and still living documents, and we don't know how these things are going to be playing out as the thing evolves. But back to what you were just talking about, the one in Covelo, they swear that they have not talked to anyone in Ukiah at all. And I just heard that there's another big land grab around Mendo Mill in Willits, and there's another Canadian corporation coming in there. Keeping those things at bay and running something on a local level, I think would be really important.
I think well, our next meeting will be in February, because just the way the timing is with the holiday the same week and staff availability that first Thursday of the month. So the next meeting will be the first Thursday of February.
Okay, first Thursday of February. And actually, I agree with you, Paul, because
February 7th.
The final regs will have come out in the middle of January, if not before. And so it might be important for us to act on asking the board or recommending that the board ask for clarification on certain things or whatever.
Right, because we only have 5 days.
So save the date now.
We have to have a...
I'm not even addressing the response, the 5-day response. I'm talking about just, like, I'm assuming that 5 days, we're just not going to be, especially because we don't know when it is and the holidays. But after that, once they are issued, even if we can't change anything about it, we might need official request by a county for clarification on certain things that are like worded weird or whatever.
Understood.
But I hear you about the 5 days response, but personally, there's no way that I think that the coordination of this group could effectively do it. I think that I encourage everybody to do what they can.
And we can see where we are at that meeting, and then in the meeting of March, we should have a list of all the cannabis bills that were introduced before the deadline.
Right.
Because the deadline is like usually the last day in February. So February 7th, 1:30, same place. So save the date.
Same bet channel. February 7th, 19. Wow, it's going to be 19.
I know, right?
Right.
I think maybe we should add one more thing to this, whether the statewide policy would change or not. But I think that we should update our request that the state of California ban not only Monsanto's particular processing, but what Linda was talking about at the beginning of certain kinds of tissue culture and gene editing, they're calling it, and some CRISPR process, they're calling it. I think that we should call for a ban on those activities in cannabis agriculture.
I support that.
I support that.
I wholly support that.
I support it.
So,
And Sarah is sitting here immobile.
Well, it's hard that's because
well, again, this is legislative.
Why is it tough? They already passed such a resolution.
We're the first in the country.
I think part of it is because
Let's be consistent.
we are talking about something that we all know is agricultural, but it is not considered that way legislatively. So it's sometimes
Sure it
it's
is.
parts anyway, but not holistically. So it's a tough story. I can understand why that's.
So is your concern that quote unquote traditional or non-cannabis agriculture would not want to have a ban on gene editing and CRISPR?
I think that from putting it in and having a smooth sailing and no questioning, I think that with the conversations I had the last one, whether the board want to do something like that, I feel like it's a board decision. I feel like it's not one of those things I could just add in and I could say, yeah, the standing committee is not going to really have issues, kind of thing. Just based on the last conversation, I know more public comment that's going to be coming on December 11th, and this is going to spiral into a board decision. And they're going to want to see their own ordinance.
Isn't this a board decision?
Well, this is. I can say almost 100%.
Yes.
There's nothing controversial, and I know for a fact, I believe, and all I'm saying is based on the public comment from the 4th, what's coming on the 11th, 2 new board members, and the public comment that's coming, it's going to spiral into a large conversation, and I don't want the ledge platform being hijacked by the GMO conversation.
No,
and that's the reason why I don't want to go that way.
You know what the I mean, I guess I'm surprised that there's a controversy about it.
It's not that it is controversial.
It's not just a simple, it's going to take conversation, it's going to be public comment, and we're here to talk about a lot of issues in the ledge platform that are really important. I just don't want it to be hijacked.
No, I hear you.
Derail your goal is what we're thinking.
I completely disagree. I think that the consensus of this group, which is a working group, whose mandate is to make recommendations to our board for the common good and health and benefit of this community, putting this in is important.
I don't even think the board even knows enough about what you guys are talking about.
I think we need to educate them.
I agree, because honestly, all this that you're talking about, a lot of it, I mean, you know the GMO stuff, but a lot of the gene editing, things like that, it's going to take it's not going to be as clean cut.
It's not it's just being...
They're going to have questions. We'll explain this. Well, what's going on? Staff, can you do this? Can you bring back this information? It's a conversation. We have like 30 minutes for this item, including an update from our
Like,
Okay, wait, I've got it.
Wait, with all the other things that I say that are unpopular, I understand they are unpopular. However, if you don't bring them up in a timely fashion, you will be forgotten and ignored. And that's why I think this is a very critical component.
I think it's just
I
how
would say, show up on the 10th and say that.
what Sarah and I are talking about is what would happen if there's one sparkly thing on the list. The one sparkly thing on the list has the potential to derail your project. That's the concern.
I don't think that isn't it true that, I disagree because I think that alleged platform is not going to be, I mean, ideally, wholesale, okay, we approve, but presumably the standing committee is going to have to discuss each item or say yay or nay on each item, and they can always say, well, this warrants further discussion before we can recommend it.
Statewide GMO ban on there, I'll go ahead and do it.
I do.
Or
not just
how about this?
Right, it's also
Gene editing.
And I don't really know,
alteration.
and are we just talking cannabis?
Technologies. And
We're just talking cannabis?
Put it to cannabis. I don't care about that. I don't care that the Apple people.
I'm asking.
have different apples.
I don't.
Fine with me. Keep it categorical. That's fine.
Yeah,
But it's very important.
So do it to just cannabis.
It will make it less controversial.
Yeah, and you could also,
That's fine with
you
me.
could also just do this as a, working group recommends.
Well, it's part of what we're recommending.
Yeah.
It's an extra bullet point.
Yeah.
Let's be careful how we're wording it, though, because I don't want us to leave out some crucial aspect of.
Statewide ban on GMO and gene editing for cannabis.
What about
But there's more,
thing?
and that is gene editing.
That is gene
Any
editing.
type
I know all about CRISPR.
of tissue culture gene modification.
But that is what GMO is.
Well,
Genetic modification.
I understand that, but if we've added tissue culture to gene modification that didn't exist in 2004.
Can we just say
I mean, you're really asking a lot of people that don't know what the hell you're talking about. That's what I'm saying. So let's make it simple. Gene editing, right?
No,
all
not just
forms?
gene editing,
all
no.
forms of, how about this? Ban all forms of GMO, including relating to tissue cultures and gene editing. Boom.
Technologies,
Well,
all blah, blah, blah technologies, or that may arise. I mean, we are not going to alter the gene.
Maybe use the word manipulation.
Yes, I like manipulation, because the problem is that gene editing does not fall under the current definition of GMOs, and that's the principle that these corporations are trying to use.
Manipulation.
I don't think
so.
But gene manipulation, editing,
Well, it's modification. That's what the word modification stands for.
drying.
Genetic modification.
But it's true,
GMO.
that definition, some things aren't considered, and so.
Hey, gene editing is not.
That's why I like
genetic
your all
modification, unfortunately.
forms of genetic modification.
Modification.
I think it's more.
Modifying is
Okay, ban on all forms of genetic modification.
Right, because GMO is currently only when you have.
Currently considered GMO or not.
Regardless of its GMO status.
Right.
All forms of genetic modification, what was the last part? That you just said?
I said regardless of its GMO status.
I think you need to
Regardless of its current inclusion.
You need to include the word editing because it's editing isn't really modifying. It's not changing it. It's just editing it. I think you need to include editing.
Well, that's why we said
All forms of genetic modification, regardless of GMO status.
regardless of GMO status is what we said.
Do we want to say genetic modification or genetic manipulation?
Modification / manipulation.
Okay, there you go.
I'd like to add one thing to it.
Yes,
And that-
Karen?
The reason we want this is because we need to protect the 50 year of cannabis branding that Mendocino County has established.
I think that's understood.
Well, I don't know that it's understood by people that this is going to be a new subject to. I think if you can attach community and marketing concerns to this statement, it'll be easier for people to accept. That's my
if they don't understand it.
Yeah.
So I think Sarah can explain that to them if they don't understand why it's being proposed.
Yes,
We're
that
gonna
it's
have a
not
conversation.
just
Oh, yeah.
some kind of hippie stuff.
Right.
So we get,
I think we're good.
I think we're good, and you know what, I love that this is a smaller group. I know that it's kind
We're
of,
all working groups for 6 people.
it's really, good work today, everybody. Thank you.
Are we sticking around for the next one?
I am, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, but
How dare you, Hannah?
anything else?
I think that's it. We'll be back at 3:30 for micro business. Woo. And Randy will be here. You're going to be here.
Yeah, Harder had to do something, so I had to come
Okay.
for this one.
And I think Sean's going to be. Sean?
So, goodbye, guys.
Goodbye till next time, February 7th. Save the date.
Thanks, that was fun. We'll see you in a little bit.
It's not going to be a permanent item.